In the meantime, though, we're going to talk about what's happening over in Lebanon. You know that there was this assassination yesterday, and there is great concern around the world, and especially here at home, that perhaps Syria, Iran, Hezbollah are all perhaps trying to go in there, influence it, and destabilize the government in order to gain control. Tensions are rising there. Joining us now to talk about the situation is PJ Crowley, former special assistant to President Clinton on national security affairs. Thank you for being with us.
Hello, Edie.
Well, it is a struggling democracy. There are all these forces at work in the country. When you heard about this assassination yesterday, what were your thoughts?
Well, first let's put Pierre Gemayel in context. He is the leader of a small but powerful Christian party. His uncle and his father were both prior presidents of Lebanon. Gemayel is part of the sitting Senior government that is under siege by Hezbollah, that's pushing for greater representation within the cabinet. And he's a strong Syrian voice trying to help move Lebanon to a more independent position within the Middle East. So ultimately the assassination could have been because of one or all of those factors.
PJ, let me ask you about this, because I don't understand it. But I read that that the way that their parliament is structured, if a certain number of people that form the outfit are not there, either resign or can't be there, say they're dead, when you hit that number and it's 8, then something kicks in. Now, with this person's assassination, it brings 7 because 6 Hezbollah had dropped out. What happens then?
Well, obviously, if by their constitution and their rules they cannot function as a government, in a parliamentary system the government falls, and then you have new elections. Here you have a president who is pro-Syrian. You have a prime minister and his cabinet and his government that are more independent. You have had in recent weeks kind of a power play by Hezbollah trying to increase its representation within the cabinet. A number of ministers have resigned from the government over that issue. Obviously, if you take Gemayel and a number of other ministers out of the equation, obviously, the government falls, and there would be new elections, and one would expect that Hezbollah would attempt to capitalize on that.
And we're one body away from that possibility being out there on the table. Our caption on the screen asks whether or not Syria and Iran are trying to overthrow the government in Lebanon. What do you think?
I mean, it's hard to know at this point. Obviously, there are Syrian in particular and Iranian influences in the country. Lebanon has a history of sectarian violence, so it could be any of these things. We've seen, obviously, how sectarian violence can cripple a country like Iraq. There are those who want to spread that kind of disease across the Middle East. At the same time, I'm not sure that the assassination of Gemayel necessarily serves the interest of the Bashir government, in Syria. It's, in some respects, has already backfired on them, in the sense that you've got at least in the last 24 hours, a coalition has formed within Lebanon. The UN Security Council has passed the tribunal on the assassination of Rafiq Hariri,
right,
in February of 2005, and obviously this is a potential obstacle in terms of dialogue between the United States and Syria or the United States and Iran. So I'm not sure at this point whether forces outside of Lebanon are responsible. Certainly there are a lot of influences inside Lebanon that could easily be responsible.
But don't you get the sense that we have a very short attention span? It was after the assassination of Rafiq Hariri that the international community came down, condemned it. We saw a change in Lebanon. And then things started easing off, and there was the argument about whether or not there should even be an international tribunal, which, as you mentioned, is why some of these parliamentary members had quit. Does this draw attention back, but only for a certain amount of time?
Well, certainly, if you think about the vision that President Bush has promoted for the Middle East, the flowering of democracy, that is, of course, an appropriate vision. But it's more than just elections. And we are guilty of a short attention span. There have been elections in Lebanon coming up on 2 years ago. But as we see in Iraq as well, promoting democracy involves more than just elections. It involves, enlightened leaders, but it also involves strong institutions of government government that can actually deliver services, to the people. I think probably it is fair to say that the United States and also the international community have not necessarily consistently given Lebanon's political process the kind of support it needs to be able to rise above this political violence.
And perhaps more important, we see the need now for supportive neighbors in fostering those democracies. PJ Crowley, thank you very much for joining us.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And to you too.